architecture. Because in Vicenza, time is never lost. It becomes experience. Vicenza welcomes you like this. Those who come here discover the city's soul, little by little. With moments you can live in just a few hours, but that took years of mastery to exist. An encounter that becomes connection, inspiration, beauty. This is a city that never stops, yet invites you to take your time. Here, even work finds its perfect rhythm, surrounded by beauty. You'll understand that this is the city of the mastery of excellence, where tradition shapes the present, and every moment becomes the future. Time. We chase it every day. But here, in Vicenza, time moves to a different rhythm. It's the wisdom of generations, passed down through skilled hands. The dance of precise gestures that shape metal into beauty. The rush of creation that turns into patient waiting. Years of research to forge the perfect alloy. Decades to perfect the art of industry. Months of waiting for a timeless flavor. Centuries of tradition and ideas transformed into architecture. Because in Vicenza, time is never lost. It becomes experience. Vicenza welcomes you like this. Those who come here discover the city's soul, little by little. With moments you can live in just a few hours, but that took years of mastery to exist. An encounter that becomes connection, inspiration, beauty. This is a city that never stops, yet invites you to take your time. Here, even work finds its perfect rhythm, surrounded by beauty. You'll understand that this is the city of the mastery of excellence, where tradition shapes the present, and every moment becomes the future. Time. We chase it every day. But here, in Vicenza, time moves to a different rhythm. It's the wisdom of generations passed down through skilled hands. The dance of precise gestures that shape metal into beauty. The rush of creation that turns into patient waiting. Years of research to forge the perfect alloy. Decades to perfect the art of industry. Months of waiting for a timeless flavor. Centuries of tradition and ideas transformed into architecture. Because in Vicenza, time is never lost. It becomes experience. Vicenza welcomes you like this. Those who come here discover the city's soul, little by little. With moments you can live in just a few hours, but that took years of mastery to exist. An encounter that becomes connection, inspiration, beauty. This is a city that never stops, yet invites you to take your time. Here,
Hello?
even work finds
Hello?
its perfect rhythm, surrounded by beauty.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to run through this room to ask you how you are and how ready you are for the day. I have to ask only people who speak English or pretend that I understand those who speak Italian. How are you today?
I am fine. It's very good. Yes.
Okay, good. I'm mostly doing this to kill some time and also attract people who are still outside to join this room because they might hear that something's happening here. So we'd be able to start soon. Who else is... how are you today?
Very good. Come stai oggi?
Sto bene.
Very good. Thank you, thank you. Who else is here? How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
How is everybody? Very good. Let's try here.
Oh, whoops.
Let's try in this section. The edges of the rooms are usually neglected. Hello.
Hello, hello. The Vicenza is a very beautiful town. Thank you for invitation. And pizza was great.
Okay, okay. That's not too bad. I'm trying to look at the door as well, see if it works. If you are attracting any people to join us in the room. We'll start in a minute or two. I'll just hand over to Sufyan pretty soon. How are you today?
I feel fine. It's real good. We're from Sweden, so we have traveled a long way, but we enjoy it here. It's beautiful and it's great.
Thank you. People from Sweden like it here. Good. I'll also ask you, how are you today? Yeah, you happy to be here?
Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Are you stressed today more than yesterday? or same levels of stress?
I'm never stressed. Never stressed.
Never stressed. Perfect. Okay, thank you for participating in my little nonsense to attract more people here, just because we are talking. I'm now going to hand over to Sufyan, who will start the plenary session of the E2 properly. I also ask to put the speaker who's on Zoom online as well, please. And once that's ready, we'll be ready to start.
Good morning, everybody. How are you all feeling today? Good morning, everybody. How are you all feeling today?
Still asking the Zoom people if we can get the online speaker online here.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sufyan Al-Amrani. I'm a self-advocate and accessibility expert at Inclusion Europe. I speak up at public events and I help with the Europe for Us newsletter. You may remember from Maureen telling you yesterday that I was elected to the board of the European Disability Forum. Oh, sorry.
Slow down. Very fast.
Look.
Apologize, just slow down.
Okay. Today, I will be your moderator for this session. We will talk about what the European Commission is doing for people with intellectual disability and their families. The European Commission is like a government for the European Union. Inclusion Europe works a lot with the European Union, making sure they listen to people with intellectual disability and their families. In the second part of this session, we will talk about inclusion indicators. Inclusion indicators is information about situation in more than 30 countries. We'll talk about how we use this information to work together for full rights and inclusion. Should we start? Okay, let's start with the first part. Here to tell us about the work of the European Union is Lucy Devouan. Lucy is the head of the Disability Unit at the European Commission. They are responsible for disability rights and policy. We'll talk about the work they do. Lucy is joining us online.
With you, and unfortunately I cannot meet you in person in beautiful city there where you are, Vicenza, but at least I'm connected online and we can exchange. So good morning to all of you and thank you for giving me the floor.
Hello, Lucy. Welcome to the Europe in Action in Vicenza. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm very good, very happy to be with you and looking forward to the years of implementation of our strategy, which was on disability, which was adopted a few weeks ago. So full of energy.
Can you tell us what the European Commission's job is when it comes to disability?
Yeah, so I think it's important to realize that the allocation of competences between the European Union and the national member states is settled, defined in the treaty. And in areas like education, which are super important, actually the European Union has only a supportive role and the competences lies with the member states or even in some federal government like Germany at the regional level. But even in areas where we have, let's say, little competences at European level, we can try to ensure that progress is happening for persons with disabilities and, for instance, that we have more inclusive schools by sharing good practices between the member states, by having studies, indicators on inclusion, and also by promoting with funding good practices. And funds like Erasmus Plus or the European Social Funds can support more inclusion and more inclusive schools. In the area of independent living as well, there are a lot of projects that are funded by the EU and that tries to support member states in improving independent living, developing reforms in area of personal assistant capacity, legal capacity, or disability assessment, for instance. And in other areas, we can even legislate at European level. So we have EU laws. And actually, when preparing our strategy, we listed all the laws that were relevant for persons with disabilities at European level. And there are many, and they are expanding over the years. They can be very different in very different areas. For instance, there is a directive, an EU law on public procurement, which impose to buy accessible for persons with disabilities, for public authorities. There is a very important EU law, which is the Employment Equality Directive, which prohibits discrimination on the grounds of disability in the field of employment and vocational training, and which puts obligation to ensure reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities. So in a nutshell, we use all the tools we have at our disposal, the laws, the funding, the good practices, and the exchange of good practices. And we have, I think, a powerful policy at European level, but it remains a joint endeavor with the civil society, with the member states, with the regional authorities. And the role of the Commission is, when there is a law, is to propose the law and then to check that it is well applied, well transposed. And in areas where we have less competences, is really to foster the exchange of good practices and to ensure that we have good projects, that we can fund good projects.
What are the most important things the EU is working on right now for people with intellectual disability and their families?
I think it's difficult to choose between all our priorities, but I would like to highlight the European Disability Card. The law on the European Disability Card was adopted in 2024, but now we're working with the experts to make sure that it is applied, that member states put in place the right tools so that persons with disability can demand the European Accessibility Card. They will be operational in 2028. So we have just a couple of years to make it real for persons with disabilities. In the area of accessibility, we work currently to have an expert group with member states, civil society, and public market surveillance authorities. So it's really important that we ensure that the laws on accessibility are becoming a reality for persons with disabilities. And I would say in the field of employment, we have a quite old law, more than 20 years ago it was adopted, but we are still working to make sure that it is applied and that the obligation on reasonable accommodation is known. So we have what we call a disability employment package to be sure that we work with the social partner, with businesses, with public employment services in order to make sure that the laws are applied.
We know that laws and strategies exist on paper, but people in this room live the reality every day. What gives you the confidence that things are actually changing?
Yes, this is a difficult question, because when you look at statistics, for instance, the disability employment gap or the poverty rate of persons with disabilities, you don't see a lot of changes. When you look at data on deinstitutionalization, you don't see a lot of positive changes. But I'm still very hopeful, and all my colleagues in the team are hopeful. And I will give you 3 examples, I think, of things that give me hope. First, when we were preparing the new strategy on the rights of persons with disabilities, we have discussed with many colleagues in the Commission who are not working in the unit responsible for disabilities. They are working on education, on transport, on crisis management and preparedness, on humanitarian aid, on Ukraine and the reconstruction of Ukraine. And for all of them, the disability was really an important topic, and they chipped in, they accepted to lead on some very important flagship initiative in our new strategy. So this gave me hope, because I thought that I'm not alone with my team, that really it's all the Commission services that are ready to hold the rights of persons with disabilities and to make sure that there is progress on the ground. So with this new strategy, we have flagship initiative in the field of education, transport, preparedness. We have a conference on Ukraine reconstruction that will be dedicated to disabilities, and this gives me hope that we have really been able to join forces, and we are able to join forces with other services to ensure that there is progress. What also gave me hope is the conference that was organized by the Cyprus presidency 2 weeks ago, and to which you participate as well, Soufiane, and that was dedicated to legal capacity. It was really about how we make sure that Article 12 of the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities was implemented. And it was really fascinating to see how some member states are really front runners. They have abolished guardianship, and they are able to have system and support services, so that we have not substituted decision making, but supported decision making. And the countries, for instance, that were very good were Ireland, Spain, Malta. Cyprus also is developing a new system, and this gave me hope that really we can make progress and ensure that we are together fully implemented the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities. And the last example I would like to mention is the European Disability Card. Last week, we had an expert group with the member states, but also with candidate countries and potential candidates, for instance, Moldova, Serbia. And all the experts were really committed to make this a reality, to ensure that the European Disability Card was functioning. So it was really a good example for me to show that we can both enlarge, widen the EU with new member states, and at the same time deepen the EU and put in place an ultra-practical tools that can change the life of persons with disabilities. So for me, these three examples, mainstreaming, good practices in member states, and concrete project in an enlarged EU, these three examples were for me really source of hope.
People with intellectual disabilities are often left out of daily conversations. What is the Commission doing to make sure people with intellectual disabilities are heard?
For us, it's extremely important that persons with disabilities, including persons with intellectual disabilities, are heard, are listened, are consulted, and actually do participate in the design development of policies, and do participate also in the monitoring and reporting on what works, what doesn't work. That's why we have put in place the disability platform, which is an expert group with a representative for member states, but also representative of civil society organization representing persons with disabilities. And in this context, Inclusion Europe is really consulted on key initiative, and also on the monitoring and reporting on what we do. We also have public consultation, open public consultation, and call for evidence. we try to develop easy to read material in this context. So not only for our own strategy, so when we have an open public consultation on the strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities, but also in other contexts that are equally relevant for persons with disability. So for instance, we try to have accessible open public consultation on gender equality, on cyberbullying. Voilà. So it's not only to ensure, the key is not only to ensure that persons with intellectual disabilities can participate in the design of disability policies, but also in a wider range of policies that are important for them. So we try, as I said, to ensure that our communication tools are accessible, and we try to lead by example as public administration. This means also supporting and funding civil society, so that and including civil society representing persons with disabilities. I think the strategy, I think the role of civil society is really recognized by the European Commission. We have a dedicated strategy on civil society, so we want to have a civic space, a public space where you can all participate to the public debate at European level.
What do you need from organizations like us to do your jobs better? What can self-advocates, families, and their organizations do?
Yes, so I think the key point in this area is, I mean, there are different layers, let's say, of action. The first one is probably to gather evidence, data, testimonies, examples of good practices. So, for instance, the report on inclusion indicator is very important, so that we gather the data. In Europe and in the EU, we are committed to have evidence-based policies. This means we need to have data before launching a new policy, before launching a new process. We've made some progress with Eurostat to gather data on disability. So now we have a key indicator at European level in most surveys, so that we get data on disability employment rate, on poverty rate of persons with disabilities, on education, on transport. We try to gather data, but the granularity of this data is not yet perfect, and in many cases we cannot disaggregate the data by type of disability. So I think it's really important that CSOs also gather data by type of disability, so that we make visible the barriers faced by persons with disabilities. So I think really the key area is to ensure data and testimonies are made public, but also beyond that, to ensure that to show that progress is possible, that the world can be different in a way. Because I truly believe that we can only make progress when we build on good practice that has happened at local, at regional, or at national level, and that we need to be bold. But for that, we need good examples to show how we can make progress. So. In a way, I would say the role of civil society organization and also persons with disabilities and their families is to be both kind of a watchdog, telling us when things are not okay, when we are not going in the right direction, but also being a lighthouse, telling us where progress is happening and how we can make progress in those areas. I truly believe that social progress can only happen with social movement, with civil society. I used to work on gender equality before the Me Too movement, and I can see the difference when social movements are powerful and listen. This really makes a big difference in terms of policy development. So keep up the good work. That would be my key message, and be reassured that your organization and your work is powerful and can have an impact on policies at European level.
Thank you, Lucy, for answering my questions. Now, let's see if anyone in the audience has a question.
Hello, I have a couple of questions. You didn't mention anything about research and funding for research for the neurodevelopment. And a second one, you mentioned independent living. And I would like to understand how, in preparation of the plan 2735 of the European Commission, the way how the funding can be shared between the countries is left to the member state, or there is something that it can be done earlier in the Commission also. Thank you.
Not sure what you ask if she can answer. You ask if she can hear the question.
Do you have a question?
Did Lucy hear the question? Yeah.
Yes, I heard the question. I can reply now or
Yeah,
take different...
yes, please. Yes. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
Usually.
okay, good. Thank you. So indeed, I didn't mention research, but it's actually a quite powerful policy at European level with a lot of funding and a big program, which is called Horizon Europe. And through this program, we have published dedicated call on disability in different areas. So, for instance, there was a call on independent living, a call on labor market, so to ensure that we have good data on those topics and that we research what works, what doesn't work. And we also had a mainstreaming of disability in other areas. So, as you mentioned, neurodevelopment and let's say more scientific projects. So we really try to do our best so that research programs do take into account disability. And I must say, the colleagues working on disability in the department responsible of research are really willing to take on board our comments, and we work jointly with them so that we ensure that research policy do take on board disability. On independent living, we have published guidance on independent living so that the funds, the EU funds, do promote independent living. My colleague Olga will speak about it later today. But what I can say already is that this notice do apply, this guidance does apply to the current programming period, but also to the next programming period, namely 2027, 2030. So really, we try, this notice is really to be taken on board by the countries when developing projects that are funded by the EU. And at EU level, we can distinguish two types of funding: the direct management, where the Commission is really in the lead in allocating projects, selecting projects, and then indirect management, where we work with the member states or with regions to ensure that the principles of the EU are actually respected. And indeed, as you say, in the new multi-financial framework that is currently under negotiation, there are what we call the national and regional plans, which is the basis of a negotiation between the Commission and the Member States on how to use EU funding, and the negotiation on the national plans and the national investment has not yet started because we are still negotiating the framework, let's say, between the two co-legislators, the European Parliament and the Council, so the Member States. But very soon we will start to work on to negotiate those to negotiate on the basis of those national plans, and we'll try to make sure that the notice guidance is part of the conversation. And also, I'd like to recall that we have some safeguards to ensure that the Charter of Fundamental Rights is respected when using EU funds. And this charter do include some article on non-discrimination, on disability, and it should always be interpreted in a progressive manner in line with other international agreement, international treaty, such as the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disability. So we have a number of safeguards that we can use to be sure that independent living is promoted.
Hola, tengo una pregunta. ¿Cuántos grupos de trabajo de personas con discapacidad trabajan en la Unión, colaboran o están en la Unión Europea?
Hello, I have a question. I would like to know how many people with intellectual disability is actually participating in working teams with the European Commission.
Thank you. That is a very good question. The reality is that I think there are very few. This mirror in a way the employment rate of persons with disabilities that do exist in Europe. So persons with disabilities represent 17% of the working age population, but only half of persons with disabilities are in employment in the European Union. So the figures is not, and in addition, the rate is much lower than the employment rate of persons without disabilities. So in the European Commission, we try to lead by example. We aspire to lead by examples, and we are reflecting with our colleagues in the Human Resource Department to ensure that we have more persons with disabilities in working for the European Commission, but the reality is that we are not yet there.
Thank you. I have a question with regards to help available for families with children with disabilities. Recent research has shown that in many countries around Europe, funding has been limited to such families, and that there is an increased risk of a family falling into poverty when there is a child with disabilities. We want to highlight this as an urgent issue for the European institutions to pay attention to. What has been done and what plans are there to make sure that the situation not only stabilizes but actually improves as well for such families?
So what I can say is that there is a commitment from the Commission to try to tackle poverty risk. It's not a coincidence, I would say, that our strategy on the rights of persons with disabilities was adopted at the same time as the anti-poverty strategy. So we know that persons with disabilities and their family are at a higher risk of poverty, and that they need support services. One of the key action, one of a strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities, but also the anti-poverty strategy is to work on social services with member states, with civil society, so that we ensure that they are properly funded and that they are of good quality for persons with disabilities and their families. My colleagues in the Social Policy Directorate are also working on the so-called European Child Guarantee, where one of the target groups are children with disabilities. So there is, I would say, a specific focus on social in the area of social policies on children and on children with disabilities. So it's an area where I would say the member states remain competent, but the Commission is really here to, and the EU level is really here to support them with a framework, with guidance, with exchange of good practices. But I mean, it's good that you highlight this as an urgent issue, so that we alert and make sure that it is discussed within our policy discussion.
So I want to thank the audience for asking questions. And I also want to thank Lucy from the European Commission. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. It was really a pleasure to be with you today. This is a particular moment for me because when I started my job 3 years ago, almost, even more, you were the first the first interview I had to make was with you, Soufiane. So I'm glad to do it a couple of years later, where I'm a bit more competent and experienced. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Now for the second part. I hand over to Inga, who will talk about the inclusion indicators.
Hello, everyone. Hello. So, because we always have some technical difficulties, can you hear me? Should I speak louder?
No.
Okay, good. If I speak too fast, and I'm looking specifically at the interpreters and support persons, please raise your hand, okay? I have been asked today to present a little bit about the inclusion indicators. My name is Inge Volleberg. I'm the researcher at Inclusion Europe, and I'm the person mostly responsible for the indicators. So, first question for all of you. Who already knows what the inclusion indicators are? I see a few people here, there in the back. Okay, for those few people, I have bad news, because I'm going to explain what they are. But after my presentation, Soufiane is going to ask you some questions about the indicators, how we work with it, how we can work together. So maybe you can already give it a thought while I'm teaching everyone else what the inclusion indicators are. So, the inclusion indicators is two things. It's a data project and it's an advocacy tool. We have collected data on the lives of people with intellectual disabilities and how included they are in different European countries. And we did this because, like Lucy just explained, the data that the Commission collects is data about all people with disabilities, and it's not specific for people with intellectual disabilities. So that's why we did it. We collected data on 7 important areas of life, and we did not do this by ourselves, because me, and Milan, and Soufiane, and the rest of the team sitting here, we know a lot, but we don't know about the situation in every single of your countries. So instead, we work together with the people that this is all about, and we send surveys to our member organizations to answer. Last year, we were able to get data on 33 countries, of which 25 are in the EU. We repeat this every year. The first time that we did this was in 2023. So we now have had 3 different reports. And we're currently working on the new one in 2026. So our member organizations have just received the new survey for this year, so they can answer. We decided that this is also an advocacy tool. So we did not present the data in a very boring way with just this is how many people this or this is the employment rate. We decided to score countries. Just like in school, where you get a grade, and it's 1 out of 10. So if you get a grade below like 5, it's bad. And if you get a grade that's higher, it's better. And this also allows us to compare between countries, because you can easily think, if you have a country that scores a 7, it's doing much better than a country that scores a 4. But we also give scores for each of the indicators, so you can also see which country is doing well in what. As an example, Italy scores really well on education. My country, the Netherlands, scores very poorly on education. So if the Dutch government would want to improve education, they could look at the indicators report, see that Italy is doing much better, and hopefully learn from the school system you guys have here. At this moment, it's not yet possible to compare over time. What does that mean? If a country has a score of a 5, and the next year it has a 5.2, does not yet mean that they have improved. It can also mean that we are still making some changes. But hopefully, over time, we will be able to do that as well. So what are the 7 areas? They are now on the screen. I have to do them a bit quickly because we don't have that much time. But the scores you see are the average scores for all of Europe on these indicators. The first indicator is the right to decide and right to vote. So it looks at legal capacity, voting rights, and accessibility of elections. Second one is right to live independently and be included in the community. Looks like how many people with intellectual disabilities are living in institutions. Are there plans to close institutions? Third is housing and support, which looks like if people are not living in institutions, where are they living? Are they living with their families? Are they living on their own? Do they have the support that they need? Fourth looks at inclusive education. Are children with intellectual disabilities going to mainstream schools? Fifth is employment. Do people have a job? Do people get paid for that job? Sixth, healthcare. Is healthcare accessible for people with intellectual disabilities? Is forced sterilization still taking place? And lastly, representation. Are there self-advocates organizations? Do they get funding for their advocacy work? Things like that. So, what has the data shown us? In the last year, in 2025, we were able to capture some improvements. We could see that in Germany, they have a new supported decision-making law instead of substitute decision-making. We also saw that in Czechia and Slovenia, we have a change in voting laws where everyone has the right to vote, regardless of their legal capacity status. And lastly, we could see there was a new inclusive education policy introduced in Lithuania. But not everything is going well, and there's a lot of room left for improvement. On the screen, you see our employment indicator and the little map. So this is how we also visualize the data. Red is very bad. Orange is really bad. So you can see Europe is not doing so well, except for Iceland. Which, according to our data, is the only country who scores in the green, so it's a 7 or an 8 out of 10 on employment. But the rest of us, from our data, we see that less than 10% of people with intellectual disabilities have a paid job on the open labor market. A lot of room left for improvement. What will the data show? So this is something we expect to see in this year's report or maybe the year after. Because from talking with our members, we see two worrying trends, two things we worry about. On education, in some countries, we see that more and more children are going to special schools. Luxembourg, for example. We also know from our members in Nordic countries that something is happening called re-institutionalization, which means that where institutions were previously closed and people were living in the community, institutions are now opened up again and people have to move back into the institutions. We have not been able to capture this in the indicators yet, but we expect it to see in the coming years. But, like I said in the beginning, it's a data project and an advocacy tool. If we only have one report sitting on a shelf, data is nice, but we can't get anywhere. So this is also about working together and using this to improve the rights and inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities in Europe with our advocacy. And I have some examples of how it has been used in the past. Last year, we had a very successful Hear Our Voices events around Europe. And one of the self-advocates told us that they used the indicators as motivation to keep advocating and to know which points were the most important to advocate for. We also had the Unity projects, where they used the indicators, the 7 topics, as a way to structure their discussions and as a way to make communication easier and to have a shared goal. And lastly, we at Inclusion Europe use the indicators when we are talking with government representatives, for example, those who organize the EU presidency. EU presidency is a bit difficult. Once every half a year, a different EU country is the boss of the Council of Europe. We try to advocate for better rights and inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities, and we use the data we have on their country for our little report and our conversations with them. So this was my short introduction. If you want to know more, you can scan the QR code or go to our website. And I'm, of course, here in this session, today, tomorrow, if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions?
I don't know why I go for my morning runs before this. I should remember just my steps here. Oh, there, okay.
I am from Italy. I'm from Italy. Volevo dire quale relazione c'è tra la discriminazione e il bullismo. Noi abbiamo un problema in Italia, la criminalità giovanile, il baby gang e il bullismo. Quale discriminazione c'è tra tra discrimination school e bullismo?
The translation didn't work.
I heard what is the difference between discrimination at school and bullying? Was that the question?
No, c'è una relazione tra discriminazione scolastica e bullismo? Perché lei ha parlato di classe speciale. Classe speciale in Olanda, no? C'è noi abbiamo un problema in Italia, il bullismo, cioè il grande che prende in giro il piccolo. Quindi c'è una discriminazione, c'è una relazione tra discriminazione scolastica e disabilità e bullismo, secondo lei? Come si può sconfiggere questo problema?
Yes, sorry, now I got your question. So, in the Netherlands, bullying is used as an argument why there should be special schools. So basically the government and also some education decision makers, they say special schools are good because they would be bullied otherwise in mainstream schools. We believe, and there's also been research, that the more inclusive a school is, there is less chance of bullying because the children are more used to how diverse and different everyone can be. Bullying still happens. Bullying still happens in all schools, and that is, of course, a concern for many different groups of children. But in the Netherlands, it's used as an excuse not to do inclusive education, which I think is very problematic. Any other questions?
Scusi? Mi ha molto impressionato quel dato di Exclusion Europe, not Inclusion Europe, quando appunto c'è un ritorno alle scuole speciali e all'istituzionalizzazione. Certamente c'è una tendenza non soltanto italiana, non soltanto europea, direi a livello universale e globale, a ridurre il concetto di solidarietà sociale a un fattore meramente economico. Io credo che proprio la destinazione delle risorse, le scelte politiche sulla destinazione delle risorse economiche siano condizionanti in questo senso e su questo ci si debba orientare. Grazie.
Yes, we see overall across the world a shift to more segregation, which is very worrying. And it gives us more reason to keep doing what we are doing. There is a lot of need for it, for more inclusion, for more self-advocacy. And we'll keep working.
Thank you, everyone. And now I hand over to Milan.
Yeah, just a couple of technical things. So first, thank you, Inge, for the presentation. The next workshops will continue at 10:45 in the rooms as yesterday, so here and then on the first floor. But before we go to the coffee break, I'll invite the people who've been gathering there on the side here on the podium, please, because they also have something to share with you. I'm not very much sure what that is about, so I'm doing a very general invitation here. But after that, it's a coffee break time, and the workshops continue at 10:45 in the workshop rooms.
Scusate, no, noi volevamo soltanto rubare un minuto perché ci faceva piacere ringraziare, e chiederei qui al presidente di Anfas Macerata di salire, perché volevamo appunto ringraziare la realtà di Macerata che ci ha omaggiato e ci ha consentito di avere per tutto lo staff e l'organizzazione le magliette degli Schizzati, che hanno riscosso un grande successo, e quindi volevamo soltanto dargli un minuto insieme con lo staff di Anfas nazionale per ringraziarlo. Scusate se siamo davanti, e quindi do un attimo la parola a Marco, poi andiamo tutti a fare un break.
Sì, sarò brevissimo. Innanzitutto è un onore avere queste modelle per il nostro progetto Schizzati, che è un progetto che nasce all'interno dei laboratori artistici di Anfas, dove appunto si crea occupazione per i ragazzi. Dall'idea appunto di una nostra educatrice è nato il progetto Schizzati, dove praticamente i ragazzi sono liberi di poter personalizzare. Abbiamo iniziato con le t-shirt, sono liberi di poter personalizzare appunto qualsiasi capo di abbigliamento, o ad esempio anche le shopper, e ne abbiamo fatto un marchio. I ragazzi utilizzano la tecnica appunto dello schizzo con i pennelli, con delle vernici speciali, diciamo non tossiche e comunque adatte ai tessuti o ai materiali che vanno praticamente a schizzare, ed ogni pezzo è assolutamente unico, diverso dagli altri perché è fatto a mano, e questo qui ha dato, diciamo, una spinta enorme ai nostri ragazzi, che vedono in questa attività una vera e propria occupazione, che poi noi dopo commercializziamo nel nostro store a Macerata. Abbiamo una caffetteria dove vengono anche commercializzati, ma hanno riscosso tanto successo che ad esempio l'Università di Macerata ne ha fatto un gadget per tutti gli studenti, personalizzandole chiaramente. Alcune attività, alcune manifestazioni sportive ce le chiedono come premi, ad esempio c'è una importante gara ciclistica vicino Macerata a cui ormai da 3 anni la maglia del vincitore è la maglia schizzata di Anfas Macerata, quindi diciamo, e soprattutto per i ragazzi è un'occupazione vera, nel senso che vedono la finalizzazione di quello che è il loro impegno quotidiano, e questo è una cosa impagabile. Grazie.
Grazie a voi per averla condivisa con Europe in Action. A dopo, break. Thank you.